Guys, I got a fashion book that made me realize something. Can you believe that women's fashion, especially women's fashion, is always directly affected by the geopolitical, socio-economic, status of what's going on in the world? Let me show you. Okay, you guys, starting with ancient Egypt, which is the oldest type of fashion that we have. You can see that the silhouettes of the women are more defined, yeah, and the women tap more into their femininity and embrace it because they were more empowered then. And then we move into a couple of centuries into human civilization, and we start to see that women are covering up, and that is within the, I think, 13th or 12th century. So we start to see that the women are covering up more, the silhouettes are more or less defined. And then we continue into all of this. And this is a time of, I think, Renaissance, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can see all the women's fashion is always affected by, geopolitics. Look at this Baroque and Rococo during the 1600s. This was a time of opulence. So I'm guessing this was a time of Renaissance, basically, when man was very smart and whatever, we were discovering so many things, mathematics, like people were not discovering, but people were more into the arts, people were more into the sciences, people wanted to astrology and stuff. So many writers came from this era, and so many artists came from this era. So it was a time of expression. And now we start to see that even though the ladies are very conservative in their dressing, you can see that there is some sort of mysteriousness that is left for the imagination. And then also look at the fabrics and how rich they were. And this was a time when trade had started being so prominent, right? Now, I think something happened in the 1700s and the silhouette started getting bigger and bigger, right? I think, in my opinion, it had something to do with like women starting to understand that they need their rights, and this was their way of like showing up big and opulent, and I have arrived. And then we see the time of Marie Antoinette and her extravagance, and during the French Revolution, Americanization and the forming of America. So now, once we start to go into the 19th and 20th century, the silhouette starts to change. Yeah, so this is when like real classism starts. I think when real trade has happened between Asia, Africa, and Europe, and we start to see all these amazing wealth within like all these Spanish, British, and French empire, and that also affects the way they dress. So these were probably silks, but you can see now it's starting to get less and less, and the less it is, the more rights the woman has. So so let's continue. Now this is when we are coming to the 20th century. You guys, look at this. And we start to see the more defined silhouette, a woman who is wanting to take her place. And during politics at that time, women were actually really starting to fight for their rights. So you can see the women start to wear the sleeves of men like sleeves, Yep. And as we get into the 20th century, it's a whole revolution because during the war, this is a time when World War One was about to happen or happened, right? So women are stuck in between being leaders and being submissives, and you can see that the attitudes start to change, the attitudes of the people and the women, the men as well. Of course, those that are still aristocrats and whatever, they still wear all these ornaments and stuff. But okay, so now we are here in the modern day, like 20th century, because we have to fight wars and stuff. We become less and less feminine, you see. We become more manly. Look at this sports. We've become more manly. Look at this. All these influences are influenced by women having to take on men's roles because men are at war. So now look at these. We are still now we are going into the 20s. Now you can see that the silhouette is starting to be more less like less fabric and more of the woman showing her body and stuff. But then we also have influences from Japan, as we can see. Yeah. So now here is when the modern designer starts, the modern fashion designer comes, right? The modern fashion designer starts at this stage. That's when we got to see Coco Chanel. And we start to do knitwear. And yeah, look at this. These were the flapper style girls. Women start to be more independent and wearing men's clothes. You see, this is during World War I or during and after. Men start to be more defined and have less so while we're moving into the 30s, when the war has ended, but you see the influences of the war are still, women are now wearing suit like patterns, right? Yeah, there's still some of them that still wear this kind of style. I mean, it is still prevalent, but it's not as celebrated because women are moving on to something different. So you can say it's a bit inspired by Grecian vibes, but it's way modern, more modern. You can see how they're using the drapes, the silks, everything is way very much modern man-like. So now we are going into the 40s and we'll be going into the World War II. So you start to see the flapper style fading a little bit. We start to get into more serious like real day, modern day fashion that is very that makes sense, that is functional, that you can fit in a room, not like before where you couldn't fit in a room. Then we start to see the emergence of such designers like Schiaparelli. Now this is what I wanted to tell you. You see this fashion, it's Legion fashion. It was inspired because during World War II, women had to take on men's roles because the men were fighting. So that's when you saw women going into rooms, women doing welding, so you can see that we became more masculine in our fashion because we had to take on manly roles. So yes, I don't want to make the video is long already. So as you can see, and then we get into the 50s, right? Once we get into the 50s, it's more of after World War I, baby boomers. So women are more in their feminine, right? So you can see Christian Dior emerging. You can see that silhouette coming out. And I'm rushing, but this is where we got people like Cristobal Balenciaga. And all the way until the modern woman. Woodstock, 1970s. We are independent now, and this is who we wear. This is how we dress, guys. We wear anything. I have